All right, thank you, Shosh. Well, now joining us to discuss the situation in Syria further is an expert on the Arab world and an Israeli journalist from the Druze community, Lorena Khateeb. Lorena, thank you so much for joining us today. To start, can you break down for us what the current situation is for the Syrian Druze across that border on the north?
First of all, thank you for having me, Emily. Over the past week, our Druze brothers and sisters in Syria have been facing a brutal massacre simply because of their identity. This wave of violence was triggered, and it all started after a fake recording was shared, showing the real face behind Julani's suit and tie. People are not fully aware of what's happening to the Druze community and other minorities in Syria. Beyond the massacres and kidnappings, just yesterday, one of the Druze most holy sites, Nadal Khadar, was set on fire, and the international community remains silent. And it's very sad to say that in our time, in 2025, people are still being killed simply because of their identity.
Now, what is the sentiment, the thinking amongst Syrian Druze in response to the recent Israeli actions that we've seen? Do they want Israeli help? And what does the Israeli Druze community hope to see Israel do in order to assist?
In the recent days, I had the chance to speak with several Syrian Druze. They deeply appreciate the efforts made by Israel, even if it came a little bit late, and especially the support of the Druze community here in Israel. However, many of them are still afraid to say it in public, but they really need our help.
Now, what is Israel's interest on this issue? I mean, why would it be in Israel's interest to act on this issue, not just in terms of humanitarian efforts, which the Druze in Syria clearly need, but also in terms of security for our own interests?
I believe that Israel has a moral obligation to the Druze community in Israel beyond, the slogans we hear on the graves of our fallen soldiers about partnership and brotherhood. Now it's the time for action. It's time to stand by the Druze and to protect us, to protect them. And even if it was late, this is finally happening. Israel is defending them. But this is not just a moral duty, It is also a strategic and security interest for Israel. If we allow extremist groups to act freely across our north border, it's only a matter of time and resources before we face another October 7th, this time in the north border. Julani and Jabhat al-Nusra have a long and bloody history of terror that must never be ignored. By the way, in the last few days, I have received a deeply moving message from a Syrian who wrote to me, "You are lucky to have been born in a place that respects you, that protects you, and respect who you are." And I think this is sums up why we have to protect them, why we have to help them.
Now, there are a lot of terror groups in Syria. You mentioned already some of them, and they're escalating the situation. Even Julani himself has a history of terrorism. Can you explain a little bit about these groups in Syria that are fighting against the Druze? Who are they? And can you talk about how this minority is and has been targeted throughout the Middle East?
Sure, most of the violence is coming from Islamist groups, extremist groups that supported Julani's new leadership. The audio recording was just an excuse. What they really want is to force extreme jihad and to force extreme, to believe in what they are not and to control everyone. I also think that, the visits of the Druze religious leaders to Israel recently made these groups even more angry and pushed them to act against the Druze minority, especially in Syria.
And I wanted to ask you as a final question a little bit about the Israeli Druze community. We know that they're very, very active in the state. They serve in every level of almost every industry. Can you talk a little bit about the Israeli Druze community and explain for our viewers who are the Druze here in Israel?
Sure, the Druze community is known as one of the most integrated societies in Israel. In Israel, we represent around 150,000 citizens here in Israel, but since 1956, when the leader of the Druze community, Sheikh Amin Tarif, has signed an agreement with the government that every Druze citizen has to enlist and join the army. Every year, 85% of the Druze community join the army. We are an integral part of the Druze of the Israeli society. So we are a small minority, but we have our impact here in Israel. We are integrated in the army and every aspect in Israel. And many of Israelis don't understand why we as the Druze should protect our brothers and sisters from Syria. We Druze are like a copper pan. When one Druze hurts anywhere in the world, we all feel and we come together to protect and to support them. This is one of the most important values, I think, in our community: the unity, the solidarity, and the standing together, no matter where we are, who we are. And this is what defines us.
All right. Well, we are unfortunately out of time, but I want to thank you to the Israeli Druze journalist Lorena Khateeb for joining us today.
Thank you.